So we're actually on the last chapter of the first gate of righteous knowledge in this session, and we'll be starting on the second chapter next week. And this is class 5, and it's chapter 4 of the first gate, and it's called Bringing Recognition of God into One's Heart and Mind. So that is the topic for today. Now, we often talk about righteous people, etc., and we're going to look at what are the characters of a righteous person. What do we strive for to be righteous in the eyes of Hashem? This is what we're speaking about. So the character of a righteous person means that you walk with God 24/7. We're with him. He's uppermost in our life. Walking is a human word we're using, but it's an awareness. So we walk with God through all the situations, the good, the bad, the ugly. All that we do and process through in our day, be it our work life, family life, etc., we are going to keep Hashem uppermost in our mind. That's what we mean by walking with God. Is this what Hashem would want me to do? Am I behaving how Hashem would want me to behave? So we take on board that also we're under divine providence. So everything that we come upon throughout our day is through the interventions of Hashem. And we have a, just get it out and read it for you. I wanted to just read a little passage out of the book, The 7 Gates of Righteous Knowledge, and it's Jeremiah 23, chapter 23, verse 24, and it says that, can a person hide in secret places so that I will not see him? Says God, do I not fill the heavens and the earth? Says God. So there we have it, that he, that there's no secret place where we think we may or may not hide. So everything we say and do is actually available to Hashem. Hashem is aware of everything we say, we do, and even those things that we're thinking. So in a manner of speaking, we are, and in human terms, we are under God's microscope the whole time, 24/7. So we can't sort of imagine that we are getting away with something, that maybe he's clocked off for the day. Does not happen. So we are our behaviour is being scrutinised. There's no doubt about that. So we move on here now, and it's pertinent for us to realise that we are actually in the presence of the King. That is Hashem, the one and only God. We are in the presence of our divine King all the time. And we really need to behave ourselves. We really need to act accordingly. We would not rock up to meet the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, with coarse language and bad behaviour, and walk in front of her. If we were going to meet the Queen of England, we would be told what are the protocols and what behaviour is expected. You're not going to swear at the Queen. You're not going to, use vulgar language. You're not going to ask her awkward questions. So there are things that we wouldn't dream of doing in front of the Queen of England. So how much more important is it that we don't do these things also in the presence of our divine King? So we are to act accordingly, and that we are in the presence of the King at all times. And we're going to look at Psalm 16, verses 8 to 11. And this is in the 7 Gates of Righteous Knowledge, this booklet. Oh, well, it's a bit more than a booklet. It's a small book. And I'm going to read those from there. And it says that this is what's expressed in this psalm, which explains it. So, Psalm 16, verse 8, I have placed God before me always. Because he is at my right hand, I will not falter. In other words, I have always placed before me the reality that God is standing by me and scrutinizing me. Therefore, I shall not falter or fall into sin or any error. And I will not fall into the mistaken idea that I am the one who decides my fate. Verse 9 goes on, therefore my heart rejoices and my soul exults, my flesh too rests secure. So from this thought that God is always at my right hand, I'm happy, I'm confident, I have constantly felt serene and self-assured in my heart and soul that I will not err. My body and flesh rest in assurance as I know that only good will come from God. Verse 10 goes on and says, for you will not abandon my soul to the netherworld, neither will you deliver your pious one to see the pit of Gehenna. That's meaning purgatory. This is your way, God of truth and kindness, for you will not abandon those who trust in you and to cast them away from you. Rather, you will show them counsel and a way in any situation by which they can rely on you and continue to trust in you. That's fairly profound, isn't it, when you think about it? And then we go to verse 11. Make known to me the path of life, that I may be satisfied with the joy of your presence, with the bliss of your right hand forever. You make known to those who trust in you the way of their service, since they have faith in you and your providence, which is constantly over them. Therefore, they turn to you to ask for counsel and guidance, and you inform them of the correct path in life. So, this constant awareness is, I think it's easy for people to forget. It's easy for people to maybe think, you know, I'm not sure about that. But I think that that's one of the foundation things that we must concentrate, that Hashem is here present now as I'm speaking to you. That's how powerful he is, how infinitely immense is his power and ability, that he's here in this room with me now. He's here with you while you're listening, watching this. So what do we derive from these verses that we've just read now? So let's take a little look at that. So first of all, we have to recognize that Hashem is constantly present in our lives, as I've just mentioned now. And when we realize that constant presence is there, it's as though good things begin to happen. And that's because we are focused on Hashem. Our mind is dwelling on things. Is this right? You know, every time you make a decision, is this what Hashem would want? Before you drive to the supermarket, I mean, you obey the law, don't you? You obey the road rules because Hashem wants you to. You don't pull out in front of a car without checking your rear vision mirror. All those things you're doing are all to do with that divine providence. If you act stupidly, you can expect a bad result. If you do what we are supposed to do, keep justice and follow the laws, that includes the road rules, that includes not speeding when you're in a restricted speed zone. You don't go over that zone. So these are all things that when you're constantly aware in the presence of Hashem, you won't do those things. You don't want to do things. It's no good you lying to the police officer and saying I wasn't speeding. Hashem knows you were speeding, so I mean, demerit point straight away. So we have to trust in God in all situations because of that presence he has in our life, and he's controlling our life through that divine providence. And we also need to internalize in an intellectual capacity all that truth. We've got to churn that around within our mind and our heart and get our head around that. And we understand that the choices we're going to make from this moment on will define our character. They define our future to a degree, well, to a great degree, really, because our behaviour is what will map the next step we take. So if we have our mind constantly on Hashem, then we will be assured of making those right decisions, making those right choices. That knowledge and awareness of Hashem makes us grow in that desire to cleave to Hashem more, the desire to surround your day around Hashem, the desire to keep him present in my mind before I do, say, or act in any way. Everything I do, I will refer to Hashem like my moral compass. Everything I'll just check with Hashem. Is that, let me think about that. So that's what these intellect will tell us, those things. And it then becomes fixed in our heart, and then we make choices then that will define our character, hopefully for the very best, or the best we can do at the time. And that then reflects in our speech and our actions and our thoughts, etc. Now, I just want to refer here to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 39. I'm just going to read that. It says, "You shall know this day and take to your heart that Hashem, he is the God, in heaven above and on the earth below. There is none other." I don't think we can emphasize that to ourselves too often, really. He has the final say about everything, including whether I leave the house on time or get a flat tire or delays me going to work. We've covered these things in a manner of speaking in previous classes. But it is that that constant presence. We then begin to absorb it, and we start to realise that divine providence is there. There's nothing we can do about it. And that's understanding and intellectualising the truth. That's what that is. And then that influences the choices we make for the better, we hope. Now, one of the interesting things about we as humans is we are emotional. Lots of things define our emotions, some good, some bad, some poor choices too, or poor understanding. But generally speaking, we can say with confidence that emotions, meaning our heart's desire or our heart's wishes, do affect our comprehension intellectually. They kind of, sometimes it can sway us in the wrong direction. And those emotions are what then leads us into some certain actions. Hopefully good, sometimes they're not. Sometimes people make emotional decisions, and there's an old saying, before you make a sort of significant choice or plan, you should sleep on it. Now, that is an old saying, and we often laugh that off. Look, when they're not life and death choices, it never hurts to sleep on something, because very often in the morning when you wake up, when you're rested and you're not stressed, you face that you may make an entirely different choice, and that's not a bad thing, because in the heat of the moment in our emotions, we do tend to make decisions that are just that, based on emotions. We want to make them based on truth and common sense, you know, realistically look at the reality of it. So we also know, we can use as an example, how we often, we're quick to act and do things that we truly love. You know, if you're into, let's say you're into walking your dog every afternoon, you have to do that and you look forward to it, it's a pleasant experience. So, you know, you attend to that. You prioritize and make that's part of your plan. You do that, you enjoy it. It might be that you enjoy a game of golf or something on the weekend, and you plan ahead to do that so that you've got that free time, because that joy, that niceness that it fills you with, that, be it relaxation or you're doing something to achieve something. I myself enjoy quilting and patchwork, and I have other things I have to do, but I try to set aside some time each week to indulge myself in that pure love of patchwork, where I lose myself in the sewing room and, you know, stitch away. It's very meditative. But often I have other things I have to do. I have other family. You know, you do things for your family, you have housework, and let me tell you, I can get around that housework pretty quick when I'm rewarding myself and saying, once this is all done, I'll be able to go and do some patchwork. It's amazing how quick we can prioritise and get things done to actually get to the things that we love doing. So that's just an example, and I'm sure you all have examples like that, things, you know, might be your garden, whatever. You hurry to get other things, mundane things done so you can get out and be absorbed in that love of whatever it is that you enjoy doing. And that's, in a way, how we're supposed to be. We're absorbed in that love of Hashem, absorbed in that doing the will of Hashem, just as we would be if we're wanting to go out and weed our garden, prune our garden, whatever. It's that love of wanting to do that love of wanting to be with Hashem, that joy of being in the presence of Hashem all the time. It's like an unseen glow you have, a happiness about being there with Hashem all the time. So we move on now to look at what God expects from us, what He, how shall I say it? The sort of behaviour and the principles that He expects from us. What are they? Well, to be a righteous Gentile would be number one, I should imagine. He wants us to be a righteous person, a good, principled person. And that would include and would be achieved through us abiding by the 7 Noahide commandments, His 7 divine commandments given to mankind. And we should know by now what they are. So I'm not going to go through each of those individually. So we would that would be our foundation. Those 7 divine principles are that foundation that we must live by. That's our foundation rock. That's the foundation of everything we do is built up from that. And that the very act of us doing that places Hashem in the centre of our life. It's a calling to be able to please Hashem. You want to please Hashem with your behaviour. You don't want to disgrace yourself in His presence. That's not what what you want to do. And we look back at the previous psalm we read, Psalm 16 and verse 8, reminds us of that. I have placed God before me constantly. Now, we often say, oh yes, God is a big part of my life. Well, how big a part of your life is Hashem? We all say it. It's, my life centers around Hashem. But is that only when you're praying for something you need, or when you regret something you've done, you want to talk to Hashem about it? But what do we as humans mean by that phrase, that I have Hashem in my presence, I place him there all the time, I'm face to face, everything I say, do and think is to do with Hashem? Well, it's not that we have to consciously, completely jog our memory, like write myself a memo, oh, before I hang the washing on the line, I must think how Hashem wants me to hang the washing on the line. I mean, it becomes a way, it seeps into you in a way that in even the mundane things we do, we think about Hashem. Like you go out to put the washing on the line, if you hang it on the line, you go outside in nature, looking at his creation. It might be to put it in the clothes dryer. Aren't you grateful that you have a clothes dryer? Hashem's, provided you with an income to have a clothes dryer. And you're going to get, even though it's pouring rain outside, you haven't got to worry because all your family's clothes are going to be nice and dry, and you'll have warm, dry clothes for them. So these are the simple things. We put it into, fit it into our daily life as we live. So then once we get to that stage of that perceiving Hashem in our life all the time, I'll tell you something that might make sense. When you go to do the grocery shopping, I don't dislike doing it, but it's not my favourite journey, put it that way. I'd rather be doing quilting, but we have to eat, and it's part of what we have to do, provide for our family. And I look at some of the fruit and things there, and even that prompts me, because I look at some of the fruit, and in bad seasons and that, it's not always perfect, but it's fruit. What's on the inside's fine, but what's on the outside might look a little bit marked, or might have a brown mark on it or something like that. But I think it's still Hashem's creation. I think, you know what, I've got a few spots on me too. We all have. But hopefully the majority of that piece of fruit is going to be nice. Like the majority of what we do with our life is going to be nice and juicy and, sweet, the way it should be. So even when I'm looking at that fruit, I think, I wonder what the fruit would have been like in the Garden of Eden. It's just a fleeting thought. But that's how you get after a while, when you start to make Hashem's presence in your life the whole time. So we develop that fear of separation. We don't want to be separated from Hashem now. He's in the passenger seat when we're driving. He's with us when we go to pick the kids up from school. He's with us through our tough times and our happy times, celebrating the family, etc. So that desire then provides us with an opportunity to draw even closer to Hashem. And we do that through the way we live. The way we live, that means loving kindness towards others, generosity, principled behaviour, again, going back to the Noahide commandments. But, help an elderly lady with her groceries, put them in the car or something like that. Do you know, it was only 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in our little local car park of our supermarket. I didn't have a big amount of groceries, 2 or 3 bags in my trolley. And there was a young man, I sort of know who they are, but I didn't know their name. You know, you see young ones growing up in your area. And he came over and he said, "Here, Mrs. Thompson, I'll put that in your car for you." And then he took the trolley away. Do you know, that was completely, like, he just did that. He just did that spontaneous act of kindness, and I appreciated it. It made me feel good. He did a nice act. So it doesn't take a lot. Just being conscious that there may be something you can do to help somebody else. And it did help me. It saved me having to lift it out of the trolley and put it in the boot of the car and wheel the trolley back. And of course, we all know what supermarket trolleys are like. They have 4 wheels and only 2.5 work properly. So, you know, that was an enjoyable interlude for me. So, and also this includes prayer and praise to Hashem. And I know I harp on this, but you know what? Sitting down and saying the Psalms, make yourself a target of, you know, there's 150 Psalms. You can divide those up over a period of days and say, look, I'm going to say the whole book of Psalms in the next 2 months or the next month, or you might say the next week or something like that. But there are times those Psalms to Hashem are like you're singing to him. It's a song of praise. That's what they're called. So try to do things like that. That makes you even more aware. It all brings you close. All brings you closer. The other thing that people will discover that they begin to do is that you'll start to begin to distance yourself from certain things. Now, some of those things, they will be all different for different people. Everyone will have different things that they distance from. But it could be involving groups or bad habits that you've developed, you know, over a period of time. It could be certain activities that you been participating in and you don't think that's probably appropriate anymore. And the reason you think that and want to distance yourself is because you feel that they are not, they wouldn't be something that the divine will of God would be pleased about. The divine providence may affect us. So, and that, when you get to that stage where you think twice before you do something or say something, you think, oh no, I'm going to shut my mouth for once in my life. I'm not going to say a word, you know. That is like a little marker that says you're on that path to piety now. You're starting to emerge and grow. That constant understanding of Hashem always in our life, it's starting to bear fruit, so to speak. You're starting on that path to piety. So here we have a subheading, the path of piety. Well, we've read Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 39. You shall know this day and take to your heart that Hashem, he is the God in heaven above and on the earth below. There is none other. And we can think about Abraham. Think about Abraham in Genesis 15:6. And he trusted in Hashem and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. Now, Abraham, well, most of us will probably never attain the enormous piety that Abraham had. But he invested his entire life, his whole being was invested into proclaiming who God was, the truth about the one true God. He was always conscious of Hashem. And we read the stories of how, you know, he provided people in the desert, you know, the caravans passing through. We're all familiar with that story. And he would feed them, nourish them, and feed their animals fodder, etc. And when people offered to pay, you know, they had a choice of that, or they what he preferred them to do was to say thank you to Hashem. So he went out in his own way and spoke to people and drew light upon the fact that there's one true God. Here's a prayer you can say. You've eaten. That's all I want. I want you just to thank Hashem for the food you've eaten. I want you to acknowledge that a greater power than us provided this food. So Hashem was bringing that light of the divine to people and strangers along the caravan paths and things. So, while, as I said, we may never attain a level of faith, but it's always little steps. And there's always people in the past and in history that we can take examples from their life. Some people have led exemplary lives in goodness and kindness, and it's good to read about them. There's so many humanitarians out there that have taught us all something. And, you know, when you think about it, Abraham truly was a humanitarian. You know, he not only cared for them and their animals in their travels, but he provided spiritual nourishment as well for them. So, as I said before, we may not reach Abraham's level of piety, but what we have to do is assure ourselves that we, according to our ability and our understanding, that we do try. We do try to be righteous Gentiles. We do try to have a pious life. And that starts... you know you're on that road when you've got that strength and courage, as I call it, of your conviction. You know it's right. You know it's right. I know there's no getting out of it. It is the right thing to do. And so that strength and courage gives us the will and the desire to go on and get closer and closer. And so that you won't have to fear being parted or separated from Hashem. You have that desire to bask in the divine presence. And the other thing that's rather interesting is that you're not embarrassed by those that may disagree with your faith or your opinion, or your beliefs and choices. You don't get embarrassed or upset or try to hide that anymore. And I know that there are a lot of people who have left other religions, and these people have formed tremendous connections with these people in these groups or churches or whatever. You know, some of them have got lifelong friendships, and then they see the light. They want to acknowledge the one true God of the Torah. They want to just follow those teachings. And then they have that uncomfortable and unthinkable chore, I suppose, or task of, you know, having to answer questions. Why haven't you been to church lately? Haven't seen you at church lately. Are you okay? Is anything wrong? And so therefore they feel awkward, they stumble and sort of make half-hearted excuses, etc. And that I can understand must be devastating, But I think what you have to say is that steel yourself, have that courage to say, look, I'm stepping back from where I've been and I'm looking at where I'm going. I want to follow a path of truth. I want to follow the God of the Torah. I want to learn the fundamentals of what God expects of me. You know, he has given us 7 divine principles to live by. I want to explore that more. I'm stepping back from all those activities and associations I had before. So it's not easy. It's not easy. I don't envy people who have to go through that. So this is really just a wrap up, and the main thing to remember is that each step gets easier as you go along. And some people find they can become very much attached to Hashem very quickly. And others, they struggle a little bit. You know, there's a tug of war, toing and froing going on. And because they've got family and friends and groups and things, and one person says one thing and another person says something else. But just have the courage, if nothing else, just remember that divine providence is acting out your life. So be guided by that. Be guided by that. And that's the best you can do. And then the next step, Hashem will show you what that next step should be as well. Now, in closing, in the end of that chapter in the 7 Gates of Righteous Knowledge, that last chapter, we're just finishing now, there is an adaptation of the Shema prayer. It's been adapted for Noahides by Rabbi Moshe Weiner, and it comes out of the traditional Siddur. Now, some of you may already have that. Some of you may have a copy of the Prayers, Principles of Faith from asknoah.org, where you will find that prayer in there. But I am just thinking that maybe some of you don't have it and are new to the Noahide way of life. So this is a beautiful prayer, the Shema, and it's in Noahide prayer books. But I just thought I might say it out loud. I think it has, it just affects me when I say it. Our Father, merciful Father, who is compassionate, have mercy on us and grant our heart understanding to comprehend and to discern, to perceive, to learn and to teach, to observe, to practice and to fulfill your will with love. Enlighten our eyes in your wisdom. Cause our hearts to cleave to your 7 commandments and unite our hearts to love and fear your name. And may we never be put to shame, disgrace or stumbling. Because we trust in your holy, great and awesome name, may we rejoice and exult in your salvation. Lord our God, make your mercy and your abounding kindness never forsake us. And with that, I will close. We have a reference list here of what we've discussed today as well. So I will see you in the next lesson. Good night and God bless.